I don't need that, do I? Alright, hey guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Urban Wrench. Today, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you 5 tips to keep your car safe and sound and during the entirety of quarantine. Let's get to it. The first thing, obviously, that I would recommend as a car guy and an enthusiast for cars is actually getting in your car and turning it on. This is probably the easiest thing that you can do and will save you a lot of time the next time you go to service, because your car isn't going anywhere because you're not going anywhere. So there comes the point of why do you have to turn the car on? Basically, you have to turn the car on for the fluids to go through, for the engine to grab a bit of warmth. So basically, these engines are built so that they can withstand some amount of heat and some amount of fluids flowing through it. With time, what happens is the fluid level gradually decreases and then it settles to the bottom of the engine. Resulting to that is probably engine seizure, which is something that nobody wants. So the first things first, get in your car and turn your car on. Alright, so if you turn your car on after a lot of days, let's say a week or two maybe, don't worry if you have any sort of engine lights on your dashboard. Those could be check engine lights, ABS fault lights, brake sensor lights, if you have brake sensors in your car and if it's brand new, like relatively new. You could also have tire pressure monitor lights, which is basically to tell you that the amount of pressure in the tire isn't exactly what it's supposed to be. So those are the few lights, and don't mind. I mean, it's meant to be that way. The car's ECU is trying to revive everything because you have not driven. So it's going to show you these faults. Don't worry. But if these do persist, I would recommend going to a dealer and actually checking them out, because, or not just a dealer, but then any of your local garage mechanics or any of you who you trust with your car. So that's point number 1 for you. Alright, so coming to point number 2. Point number 2 is, as I've told previously, TPMS, Tire Pressure Monitoring System. So with tire pressure monitoring system, that is one quick way to find out if you have relatively enough air pressure in your tires. But at the same time, it can't help you to tell that you've developed a flat spot. A flat spot is basically when the car is sitting for a long time, and then instead of the wheel and the tire having an actual full circular shape, it actually turns out to be like this. So it will have a slight bit of flat bottom. That results in poor driving. And then with poor driving, I don't mean that everybody is going to go zooming past since the roads are open. No, it can even be felt in the steering wheel when you're going at around, let's say, 40 to 50 regular city speeds. So that is one thing you have to watch out for. The easiest way to do this is to probably get in your car, turn the car on, obviously, and then the first major thing you have to do is, when you turn your car on, leave it on for a couple of seconds. I'd recommend about 30 to 40 seconds, because that way you can actually tell if your car's going smooth enough. Like you'll be able to feel it in the throttle. So keeping that aside, the easiest thing you can do is get in your car, put it into gear and move it further. That's it. That's the easiest bit of all. You just get in your car, you move it forward and backward a couple of times. So that revolves the wheels, since they're moving, obviously. And that will eventually mean that you will not have any more flat spots. Alright, so tip number 3 is basically a consistent mix of 1 and 2. The first one where I told you is basically turn your engine on. For obvious reasons, that the fuel is going to have a revolution, the oil is going to have a revolution, and it is going to make sure that your engine stays hydrated. So similar to you, if you are feeling thirsty, you'll have some water. Fortunately enough, if the car is thirsty, it'll have oil and petrol, diesel, whatever your car runs on. So never ever check the fluids of your car when they're at a standstill, for the obvious reason that you'll get a misreading. So when you drive the car and you get a check engine light or an oil light, the first thing you do is get some more oil and pour it in. But that would be risky if you're not driving the car right now. So the reason that being risky is you may overflow the oil and you may overfill the oil. Overfill and overflow are completely different. So overfill is basically more than the maximum amount of the oil that the engine can take. Overflow is when the amount of oil is just a little bit, just a tad bit more, but then it may seep in through the into the engine, and it may cause problems. So overflow and overfill are completely different in car terminologies. Don't quote me on it, but that's how far as I know. And then, so basically, never ever check your oil. If you do want to, however, I won't recommend you right there, at this point in time, but you can probably go out on a small drive, maybe around the block. That will give you enough oomph in the engine, and then enough oil flow in the engine to come out and check your dipstick. So there you go, that's point 3 for you. Slightly changing the perspective for tip number 4 is to pump your brake fluid. The easiest thing that you can do is to pump the brake fluid. It's similar to getting into first tip, which is turn your engine on. So what you do is you put your foot on the brake, let it release, and then you push back. So you push in and then you push back. You do this a couple of times so that the brake servo, which gives the brake fluid to the brakes, the brake rotors, that gives you enough brake grab, which is possible. So if you just push it in and then push it out, push it in and push it out. Do this a couple of times to make sure that the brake servo receives enough momentum so that the brake fluid can actually move on to the brake calipers. Alright, so coming on to the last tip, and that being tip number 5, is it may apply to 50% of you and it may not apply to 50% of you, for the sole reason that your car may have shaded parking and your car may not have shaded parking. If your car doesn't have shaded parking, this one's for you, chaps. So basically what you do is you take your steering wheel and you turn it 180 degrees, which is basically upside down. What that does is, when you hold the steering wheel, when normally if you get into a car and you have to drive, you flip the wheel, and then the top area is where you hold the wheel. So with this, the upper part of the steering wheel won't be warm. So in case of any emergency, you'll be able to drive off and have cold hands, preferably. It's summer, so I mean, you don't want anything hot right now. So what this does is, this part of the steering wheel gets heat. So when you flip it over, this side's unaffected. It stays in the shade. So that is it. So alright, ladies and gentlemen, that is my top 5 tips for a car that is standstill. If you've liked the video, make sure to drop a like. If you're new to the channel, you might want to consider subscribing. Don't be afraid to comment. I'm more than happy to reply to all of you guys. With that being said, I think it's time to head out. Bye. Almost forgot, by the way. For latest updates, follow me on Twitter and on Instagram with the following handle. Thank you. It's time to head out.